it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome Senator John McCain to MEI's third annual conference on Turkey. You know, this conference falls, I don't need to tell any of you, at a time of great tension in the region, in general with Syria, but specifically, and as you know, Senator McCain has been one of the leading voices in calling for a more assertive U.S. action to help the Syrian opposition. And I'm sure you all have also noted that in April, Senator McCain and Senator Joe Lieberman went on a surprise trip to the Turkish-Syrian border. They met with leaders of the Free Syrian Army, and they visited Syrian refugees. This was an enormously important mission for U.S. senators to do. He met with Turkish leaders in Ankara as well. Commenting at that time, Senator McCain said, "This has not been easy or cost-free for Turkey, but it's the right thing to do, and it demonstrates the compassion of Turkey's great democracy." So I'm not going to go through his bio. You all know it. His distinguished record as an American hero during the Vietnam War, his long service to the United States in the House and Senate, and his bid for presidency. But suffice it to say that Senator John McCain has always been true to his values, and he's always been, and that has reflected in his friendship for Turkey. The Middle East Institute is honored to welcome the senator and to give, so please join me in a warm welcome for Senator McCain.
Well, thank you, Wendy, for that kind introduction, and you had to mention that I ran for president, I guess. I often say after I lost, I slept like a baby. Sleep 2 hours, wake up and cry. Sleep 2 hours, wake up and cry. Thank you, Wendy, for that kind introduction, for your leadership of the Middle East Institute, your many years of service in our diplomatic corps. I've had the great honor of knowing many of the members of our diplomatic corps. Wendy Chamberlain is one of the most outstanding and remarkable people that I have had the opportunity of dealing with. Let me also thank Ambassador Tan, the Turkish government, and our many guests from Turkey for their generous support of this conference. I'm grateful that Wendy and the Middle East Institute would think to invite me, a member of Congress, to speak with you this morning. Most Americans no longer care what we in Congress have to say. Last time I checked, the approval rating of Congress was at 11%. I've not yet anyone lately in that 11%. We are down to blood relatives and paid staffers. I'm not so sure anymore about paid staffers, but anyway. On a much more serious note, before I go any further, let me say that my thoughts and prayers are with the 2 Turkish pilots and their families, pilots who remain missing after being shot down by Syrian forces last week. All of us are praying for their rescue and safe return. This was an unnecessary and unacceptable act of aggression, and as tensions between Turkey and Syria continue to rise, the Turkish government and people must know that their American ally stands firmly with them. I often talk about my lifelong affinity for Turkey and my abiding belief in its central role in history. I remember as a young man studying the epic history of Byzantium, the Ottoman Empire, and the founding of modern Turkey by Kemal Ataturk. I remember hearing stories about the brave soldiers of the Turkish Brigade who served alongside American forces in the Korean War. I remember learning how one of those Turkish units fought to the last man to repel the Chinese invasion, and that man was ordered to surrender so he could tell his countrymen about the heroism of his comrades. I've traveled to Turkey many times, and Istanbul, along with Jerusalem, remain my 2 favorite cities in the world. Throughout my decades of involvement in U.S.-Turkish relations, I cannot recall a more dynamic and exciting time for our alliance than right now. Times of significant change within Turkey and tectonic shifts in the geopolitics of the surrounding region, both of which are casting our alliance in a new light. Over the past few years, there's been a lot of debate in the United States about what these changes in Turkey mean. We have heard it said that Turkey is embracing Islam at the expense of secularism, that it's turning its back on the West in favor of the East, and that U.S.-Turkish cooperation is being displaced by a more tense rivalry. Some commentators have even asked, quote, who lost Turkey? Much of this recent debate about Turkey has missed the point. It tends to romanticize the past and misread the present. The fact is, Turkey is changing, and the nature of our alliance is changing with it. Nonetheless, there is every reason to believe that these changes can be and should be for the better. Indeed, we now have an opportunity to fundamentally transform our alliance, to make it broader, deeper, more durable, and more relevant. In short, to make it one of the most important bilateral relationships in the world for both our countries. No one should expect this to be easy. It won't be. Nor does it mean that we will cease to have our disagreements. These will persist. But if we remain guided by a few core principles, we can succeed in transforming our alliance. One of those principles is that the United States and Turkey need to deal with each other realistically, talk with each other honestly, and build greater trust. This should begin with us in the United States. We need to realize that the U.S.-Turkey alliance does not consist of Americans giving orders and Turks getting in line. And to the extent that we have acted this way in the past, it might explain why many Turks still feel our country with distrust and even distaste. We also need to realize that our alliance with Turkey, like other relationships that we value most, should not be reduced to the one-dimensional perspectives of domestic special interests, as worthy as they may be. But perhaps most importantly, we Americans need to realize that we are now dealing with a different Turkey. Over the past decade, Turkey's democracy has become more inclusive and more representative of Turkish society as a whole, including as many citizens who want greater freedom to express their identity as Muslims. As a result, Turkey is defining a new balance between its Islamic and secular heritages and between the authority of elected civilian leaders and the military's historic role in political life. America should not view either of these developments as inherently bad. At the same time, the Turkish economy has experienced a decade of strong growth, which has fueled an emerging middle class, catapulted Turkey into the ranks of elite global decision makers, and inspired a more confident Turkish foreign policy. These positive trends sit side by side with more troubling ones. It's widely reported that there are more journalists in jail in Turkey than in any other country, and that intimidation of the media is a persistent problem. The ongoing detention and prosecution of military officers have raised suspicions that many of these actions are politically motivated, which has cast the illiberal tendencies of some Turkish leaders in a more disturbing light. Finally, the recent deterioration of Turkey's relationship with Israel cannot serve any responsible interest, and it's especially painful for us as we count both Israel and Turkey as vital allies. I take no pleasure in raising issues such as these, and I do so not as an enemy of Turkey, but one of its strongest and most enduring friends, who believes that it is only through a candid exchange of views that we will build trust and make the most of this opportunity to transform our alliance. If we are not open and honest with one another, especially where we differ, if leaders in both of our countries do not defend this alliance and explain its new importance to our publics, even when it may be unpopular to do so, we will be consumed by fruitless introspection rather than directing our energies outward to advance our common interests and values. We must deal with each other realistically, but we must do more than that. we must also invest in each other's success. Contrary to the dictates of realpolitik, America does not fear the growth of Turkish power, nor do we seek to limit it. To the contrary, we have a major stake in Turkey's success, and we want to enhance it politically, economically, and yes, militarily. A more capable, more active, and more influential Turkey with which we share values is a net benefit to America's national interests. And both of our countries need to invest more ambitiously in this relationship, just as the United States and India have done with each other. One way to do that is by strengthening our common fight against terrorism, especially the PKK. Turkey's recent strikes against PKK fighters in Iraq, in which 8 Turkish soldiers tragically lost their lives last week, are but one indication of the persistent threat of this terrorist group. That is why Senator Joe Lieberman and I have authored a resolution expressing Congress's solidarity with Turkey in the fight against the PKK and urging greater cooperation against its international financing and propaganda efforts, as well as greater U.S. intelligence and military support for Turkish actions to take senior PKK leaders off the battlefield. Such steps could empower Turkish leaders who want to address the legitimate demands of Turkish Kurdish citizens, as Prime Minister Erdogan has shown a desire to do so. Another way to invest in each other's success is through greater trade, and here we need to be much more ambitious. The best way to do so would be to explore the possibility of negotiating a free trade agreement. More ambitious still would be to join with Turkey in constructing a new architecture of open trade for the Middle East and North Africa, similar to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I know Turkey's relations with the EU may complicate these goals, but this has not proved problematic between Turkey and other states, and it shouldn't hold us back either. Similarly, while our defense trade and cooperation remain strong, we now have a huge opportunity to expand it even further. Turkey is one of the only NATO member states that is actually increasing its defense spending. Turkey is talking about acquiring a vast array of more advanced defense capabilities: ground, naval, air, intelligence, and missile defense. The United States is a natural partner for Turkey in its military modernization, and we should use this as an opportunity to better align our military capabilities to become more interoperable and to devise a common strategic framework to guide cooperation between our defense industries. More importantly than how we relate to each other, and more important even than how we invest in another's success, is what we do together. How we can align our great power in pursuit of common goals, not just responding to events in Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia, but leading and shaping those events for the better in accordance with our shared interests and values. It is certainly true that a more powerful Turkey is more able and willing to go its own way when its national interests demand. But what is equally true and far more important is that the interests and values of a rising democratic Turkey are increasingly in alignment with ours. This is evident through our cooperation on missile defense, our major contributions together in Afghanistan, and our closely coordinated efforts in response to the revolutionary changes sweeping the broader Middle East.